Welcome to the Advantage Podcast, a monthly unscripted conversation with host David Ashcraft and top leaders impacting our world. Created by pastors for pastors to strengthen our leadership and expand our knowledge and influence.
Hey, well, welcome to the Advantage Podcast, and so good to have two people that are, I'm going to call them experts in the field of what we're talking about today. I want to talk about technology today, and even maybe more specifically, how to utilize technology to advance ministry in the church, and maybe even get into AI and how AI can help us in the church. But as we get into this, I will tip my hat real quick and say that one of my biases towards technology, and it's been around for many, many years before computers and things were even a thing in the church. It was more in the area of worship and arts. You guys know Andy Martin, who works with us on the Advantage team, and Andy was our worship leader, and then he oversaw expansion of campuses, and so he was always bringing more and more soundboards and lights and smoke machines and all these different things that we need to spend money on. And I would tell Andy, it's a black hole. You keep coming back with more and more, and it's never enough, and it's always more expensive, even though you tell me it's cheaper and it's a better deal. So I tend to look at technology even that way, and partly because of ignorance, and I don't know what's necessary. So it's good to have people like Christian, Adam, that know what they're doing. But let's find out a little bit about both you, Adam, and Christian. And maybe, Christian, let's start out with you. And just, if you wouldn't mind, tell us your background a little bit.
Yeah, so I came up out of the military after school and found my way to the post-startup technology scene. Was fortunate to work with some amazing people, some really sharp folks. Learned a ton in the marketplace just about technology and myself and leadership in that process. And
did you work in that in the military? So were you in technology and even in school beforehand, or that was a new
yeah, a
thing
little
for you?
bit.
Okay.
It was part of the movement to sort of add technology to everything in the military.
Okay.
It was a ton of fun. And then never thought that I would be on a church staff, and made the mistake of going to lunch with my executive pastor at the church where I had been volunteering for many years. And his name was Jim Stanley out in Indianapolis. He was so kind and kind of took me under his wing and eventually recruited me onto church staff. And that's where I found my calling, found really kind of right at the intersection of technology and ministry, and became an ordained pastor, and that's really became kind of a focus area of mine. And eventually started getting asked to help churches all across the country, and kind of getting asked more and more to do that, and took the leap to just step out on my own and do that, and joined forces with some of my closest friends. I've been serving the church then ever since.
That's great. So you do have to watch out when you're invited to go to lunch or breakfast with a pastor. That's there's something going on there when
Not kidding.
you see that invitation. So name of the church that you were part of?
Traders Point in Indianapolis.
Okay.
Yep.
And it was what position did you come in as?
I came in as the CIO, which is the Chief Information Officer. At the time, I was the only CIO that I knew of.
Yeah, I was going to say that seems innovative in the church world. Yeah.
Jim is very much kind of thinking ahead there for sure.
That's great. Love the fact that you've got church background, especially as we're talking to pastors today. Adam, I know you've got church background as well. I've known Adam for a long time now. Adam came to LCBC first as an intern in the worship and arts area. And so, Adam, I can remember you were in college, I think, at the time. And I suppose it was summertime, but it was, we would sit in Andy's office, actually. Andy was the worship and arts, not sure what his title was, but he was leading worship and arts. And there'd be 5 or 6 of us that would cram into his office every week and would play in the weekend gatherings. And so that's when I first got to know you.
Yeah. That was back in 2004. And then I officially came on staff then a couple years later, and I've been at LCBC now for 20 years. Yeah.
So your involvement in technology, because it's all a fairly new field. And in my role at the Global Leadership Network, we were hiring somebody and they had maybe 14 years of experience. And one of our board members said, we can't hire them. They don't have enough experience. And we said, well, this hasn't been around long. And so to have 14 years experience is actually a lot. And so did you go into this thinking you wanted to do technology going forward? And I'll ask you, even as you answer that, tell us your role now or your title now even.
Yeah, so not initially. I actually was in college for computer science, and about halfway through, I was in a business mathematics class, and that was about as exciting as it sounds. And I just remember feeling like I need to do something different. and kind of realized I was feeling called to ministry through that. And I ended up going more the music route. I remember talking to my computer science professor about it, and he's like, I feel like we're going to need leaders in the church for technology. And I was like, no, I want to do the music thing. And went that route, and that's how I got connected to LCBC and had a number of different roles over the years there, and found myself, a little over 11 years ago, just kind of probably causing some problems for our IT team at the time. I was probably working around some systems and trying to find some ways to do things differently because I knew the potential of technology. I'd grown up with it, and I wanted to try to find some ways to leverage it. So I didn't start out that way, but then about 11 years ago, I was asked to step into this role called digital director and build a digital team at LCBC, and I've been doing that ever since.
So describe, you mentioned IT and maybe causing problems with IT. So
Yeah.
but you talked about a digital team and IT and an IT team. And so what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, yeah. So our IT team is infrastructure, hardware, like the computers that we use, the Zoom rooms that we have, cybersecurity, making sure that our systems are working and that they're safe. And there's so much technology that powers even like all the worship and art stuff today and other systems in our environments too that they're managing. And then digital is really focused on our front end, like attendee experience with LCBC. So like our website and our mobile app and our investment in that. And then also on the back end, we're really focused on how staff and volunteers leverage technology to just enhance ministry on a day-to-day basis, whether it's processes or knowing our people well or getting data so that we can make decisions on things. That's how the digital team is serving in that way.
So if I remember the discussions back when you were taking this role, and even if I look at the Global Leadership Network now, what's happened in the digital world, I would call it, I think you can tell me I'm wrong in describing it, but everybody kind of started pulling on they would find their own software, their own programs to accomplish whatever they needed in their specific area. And all of a sudden we realized we've got programs galore, none of them talking to each other, and just an area of frustration. And probably, Adam, when you came on, it was because of an area of frustration saying, we've got to get control of this because everybody's doing their own thing. It's costing us money, but we can't work. We couldn't talk with each other when
Yeah.
it came to software. So was that a big thing as you stepped into this role?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is I'm kind of a natural problem solver, and I knew what the potential was. I could see what other churches were doing, or I could see what was just being done out in just like the industry, and in my mind I was very passionate about our mission, and I was like, man, I know we can leverage that tool for our church's mission and what we're going after. So to me, that was kind of like, yeah, we had all these kind of disjointed systems, and because of that, we couldn't create better attendee experiences online. Um, when their level of expectations was rising higher every day based off of just normal products that they were using from other organizations, and that was kind of what sparked a lot of that for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
what's interesting is what people expect is what from the church they expect what they experience outside of the church. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, especially in the area of technology, we're running behind,
Mhm.
and so that doesn't make us look good. Christian, when you're out talking with churches, is that the same experience you're seeing with lots and lots of different programs out there, none of it really working together?
absolutely. I've started calling that the second king's mindset. Everybody's just doing what's right in their own mind. You
Good,
end
I like
up
that.
with
Yeah.
duplication of systems. You end up paying a lot more. And really, one of the first things I try to do is widen the aperture. I love how you talked about that just now, Adam, because so many churches, they kind of fall. If you think of a spectrum of how you might think about technology, on one end of that spectrum is this concept of IT or technology as a utility.
Mhm.
It's the wires in the wall, it's the water in the pipes. That's kind of a one very traditional view of technology, and it tends to limit churches. At the other end of that spectrum is transformational technology. That's where the technology is actually in the hands of your guests, your parishioners that are coming through the door. It's actually helping your staff be more effective. It is that digital role, exactly like Adam was talking about. So few churches add that layer on. And what they don't realize is the culture impact. Like a lot of what Adam does, I'm guessing, Adam, is culture related. It's not even technology related. It's helping people think about if I add this system, that's actually going to impact our guests. That's going to make
Yeah.
it so that their data gets lost in the shuffle somewhere. And
Right.
that's really the worst possible outcome, is that people fall through the cracks of your
Yeah.
technology and therefore your systems and your process. And people who are trying to find Jesus or trying to take the next step in their faith journey get lost.
Yeah.
So you're describing one benefit there of keeping people from getting lost, Christian. So I want to so let's come at it. We're talking to pastors. I'm just going to assume that a lot of pastors are skeptical like me. A lot of pastors are thinking, man, this is a black hole. And so I get the hardwiring side of it, though even that is challenging because what do we actually need and what's enough and not too much, or is it too good or not enough, not good enough? But when you talk about it enhancing ministry, what are some of the advantages? So what can I see as a skeptical pastor to say, Adam, it's worth us spending X number of dollars to enhance ministry? And Christian, feel free to jump in as we go through this as well. But what are some of those benefits?
Yeah. Um, some of the ways that I think about that are there's kind of like two sides of it. There's kind of like the staff and volunteer side and equipping them to do ministry. And then there's again that attendee experience side. So I'll start in the staff and volunteer side. I think a lot of the ways that we can leverage technology to add benefit or be a ministry multiplier is through knowing our people better. So like as your church grows, these systems provide a way for us to know who is in our church. We can know kind of like their level of engagement with the church just beyond giving and like attendance on the weekend.
And Adam, if
Yeah.
I could add to that,
Yeah.
there's only really, in my experience, three places where people keep their data up to date, and that's their bank, their school, their kids' school, and their
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
And Adam, you hit this earlier. The expectations are through the roof, if
Hmm.
especially when they show up and they see how much care and intention you put into Sunday morning. Their
Hmm.
expectation is that your technology is going to match, like what you're able to do to and with them through tech is going to match that. So
Hmm.
it's a two-way street there. Knowing your people, Adam, so important.
Yeah.
And also, they're going to have very high expectations.
Hmm.
So the bar's
Yeah.
set high that you guys have to live up to, that we as pastors, churches have to live up to. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're being judged on that stuff whether we know it or not. When
Yeah.
people interact, when they come, like most of our websites are our front door, or if we have an online experience. And the majority of people coming through to churches today, that's where they start. And they look for that experience and how welcome they feel there.
I saw a Barna stat that said that people will watch your service and interact with your technology 3 to 5 times before they come to your
Mhm.
physical presence, your physical building. And that's if they don't have kids. If they do have kids, that number goes up.
Hmm. So do you guys consider online gatherings and the website, is that part of the digital side or is that a whole different area?
Yeah, we consider that on the digital side.
Okay. All right.
And as I'll give you the consultant answer of it depends. There's a lot of
Yeah,
ways to do that.
yeah, true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So what else? What are some of the other benefits, Adam? You're starting to talk about from the staff volunteer side. Why do I need to, you're coming to me and you're trying to convince me that I need to spend money in the digital side. Why else should I do it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll hit real quick some more on that attendee experience side. Some of the ways that we've been looking at this is people, spend so much time on their phones daily or online in general. And for us to have an app or some type of app-like experience on a device where we can interact with our people outside of church on Sundays. So much interaction and content happens on a Sunday morning, but we can engage with everyone all week long through daily content, like we have an LCBC app. It could be through push notifications or text messages of like a daily Bible study type thing, and it allows us to stay connected with people. Then on top of that, we're providing a value for our attendees, but then we can see how they interact with that experience with those things. And that gives us a pulse on some of their behaviors and some of the ways that they might be, some of the practices or spiritual habits that they're putting in place to connect with God, which gives us just another measure of our community and how they're connecting with the church. So we're trying to build some value there. We're trying to make it easy to interact with the church in that way in the mobile app. So anything that we ask our attendees to do, some of this is aspirational still, but we're like, hey, the best way to do that is an LCBC app.
So
A
And
Adam,
question,
yeah, go ahead, Christian.
a question that I ask a lot. People are carrying their technology, the sum total of mankind's knowledge in their
Mhm,
pocket most days.
mhm,
And a question I like to ask pastors is, how often do you think people are searching for hope, searching for answers? And then is your technology good enough that they're going to come asking your technology those questions? Or are they going to be asking Google or now Chat GPT AI tools, and talk to me about the quality you think they might get from that versus from a biblical theological perspective from your church? And I just
mhm,
think it's crucial that the church be the ones answering those questions of our people that are lost and hurting. If you look at some of the Google searches that are happening in your community, which that's a thing you can do
yep,
through Google tools
mhm,
for free, and some of those searches will break your heart around, especially
mhm,
first of the year. Right about now, you're going to be getting a lot of queries about divorce, a lot of like, what do I do? My marriage is falling apart. Some of the conversations that are happening in AI, um, and really, your church has the answers. We have Jesus. Like that. That's the thing that we need to be driving our people towards.
mhm,
So how many people then? So again, the skeptical side of me goes, that's wonderful. So is a church app truly going to be able to do all of the things that you're describing, answer those questions, and even how many people participate? What are you guys finding as far as the number of people participating or enlisting the use of an app and then going further with it? Do we have those kind of numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam, I'd love to hear your personal experience, and then I can talk a little more kind of general.
mhm. Yeah. So last, I was just checking this because we take a snapshot at the beginning of every month for our metrics. And in the month of January, we had almost 18,000 monthly active users engaged with the LCBC app. And we average on the weekend right now, I think around 25,000 people on the weekend. And so there's a significant, and so some of that includes students too, because we allow people 13 and older to use the app. And we know we've been working with students to use the mobile app more and engage with LCBC that way. So that's something that we've been tracking. We are seeing that grow. So people are using it. And a lot of it comes down to kind of, again, that value. Like they're thinking, what's in it for me? So why would I use this app? What are the things that we can do to make it a pleasurable experience, but also provide value to them when they're engaging with it? So we're definitely finding
Okay.
value there.
Okay.
There's those are, I mean, that's amazing, Adam. Just those are great numbers. I like to hear that. Um, there's a church I'm helping down here in Houston, Andy's hometown originally, uh, and they've actually taken, think about the number of sermons that you've preached. That's a big number, right? Um, and they've taken all of those sermons, digitized them, and added some a technology layer to that so that they're searchable. So that
Mhm.
when you go to um, search for an answer to a question, not only do you get back, they also do a lot of they write a lot of content. They've put the transcripts online, so not only do you get back, maybe several paragraphs of text, but it'll pull up relevant 3 to 5 second clips uh, from those sermons that then you can watch like a quick preview and then kind of expand and get a 5 to 10 minute version of that same thing. And that's something that's growing every Sunday, right? There's more
Mhm.
content out there. They're now working to add their student ministry stuff in there as well that they've recorded. And so I think the answer to your question of how much is actually available, it's more than you think. And
Mhm.
that's, again, that's just that kind of widen the aperture concept of there's a lot more available right now. And going all the way back to where we started, what makes it inaccessible comes back to kind of some culture issues and the layer of technology of just everyone has to be using the same systems. We got to put it all in the same place. There's a ton of work from your pastoral staff, from campuses and from all the different people. There's a ton of work to kind of push all of that content to follow the same process. And that's the work that a lot of churches can't get to the benefit of technology because they get a year into a program or 6 months into a program and they toss it to the side and move on to the next one.
So, how do you know? Two questions. How do you know that people are using all that you described, Christian? That sounds amazing. But how do you know people are actually using that? And my second question would be, where do you start? So let's talk a little bit about where does the church even start to start consolidating all of this together. But one, how do you measure that people are truly using the sermons and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question and critically important. I think you've always got to begin with the end in mind. How are we going to measure success of this program? One thing that I have found churches are actually quite skilled at when they want to be is measuring success, like running good programs. And I don't mean technology programs, I mean ministerial programs.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we put our technology hat on and throw a lot of that out the window. And we just say, well, I don't know, it's tech. Like, how are we going to know? There are some really good ways to measure that. So there are a ton of free tools. There are like Google Analytics. Google Analytics can tell you more about how your church and your church body leverages technology than you have time in your life to learn, probably.
Mm-hmm.
There are people out there who are experts in this that you can have help. Google Analytics is just one tool. There's whole suites of these tools available that get increasingly more complex. But to give you an idea, during the pandemic, when I was at Traders Point church there in Indianapolis, our worship pastor had this question of, "Hey, I don't know. We're doing this. Everything is virtual right now. It's the very beginning of the pandemic, and I don't know if I should add another worship song to the end of the set or not." Because we kind of end and we do quick announcements and then a blessing and then we're done. Feel like maybe there should be a song there. Well, we went into the analytics and we were able to see, based on time, there was a huge spike. Thousands of people were going to view the uh, the worship service that we had had right before the pandemic immediately after our sermons were over. So that gave us a clue of, well, let's experiment. Let's just try some stuff and see what works. We tacked that song onto the end, one song at the end of the message, and suddenly we didn't have that spike at our previous worship services. So it's kind of this combination, David, of using the tools and the data that you have, number one, to see what are people actually doing and using. And then number two, being scrappy, just being willing to go experiment and let's see what happens. Let's try it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And to the second question on how to get started, like I have the privilege to get to work with a team now, and it's awesome to have a team to help do and build things. But when we first started, we didn't have that. And, we're still trying to figure out like, how do we want to do this? And it's so important to find the right strategic partners to work with. There are experts out there that love partnering with churches, and to go find them and make sure, one, that they align like missionally with what you're trying to do, and not just trying to like sell you a thing and get their product push, but they care about like the what you're doing as a church and really understand your problems and what you're going after. Every church's tech journey is a little different. A lot of the problems are similar, but like the way to navigate getting there can be unique. So just finding that right partner to work with and starting simple. Like so many times we go out and we see what other churches are doing, or we might see like a new fancy tool, a new flashy thing in technology, and we want to figure out how to pull that in. And that's not the right way to do that. You want to understand like, hey, what are we trying to accomplish? What are our goals? What are the outcomes that we want? And then how can we start to build a technology layer on top of that to support those things and enhance those things, and not just, this flashy thing over here because it's cool and we think, it will last for 6 months and then it'll go away and wasn't worth the investment.
So am I looking for like a volunteer, somebody in the church that's a tech consultant, an IT person at their company, or am I looking for somebody on staff like yourself, Adam, that because you didn't start out doing digital for us. And so what am I looking for? And say I've got 10, 15, 20 people on my staff, and I don't really have the money to hire somebody full time for this. How do I even get started with it? And who do I trust?
Yeah. I think like actually that first piece there is a huge part is who do I trust? When I was going back and just kind of thinking through our journey, so much of the work we had to do was just building that trust, especially with our other ministry teams, and that we weren't just going to do another thing that creates more work for them, but that we were trying to help them in their day-to-day job. So finding someone that you can trust well on the team, and that could be a volunteer. There could be like a key leader in the church that does this, and would be passionate about volunteering time to do that. Um, and someone that's like going in and understanding again, what's the problem we're trying to solve, and not just like, oh, we should do this, this, and this because it's what people do. But should we have a website? Yeah, that's kind of a standard now. But what do we want that website to accomplish for us? And how do we move that forward? So yeah, finding someone that you can trust is a huge piece of that because it does take a lot of trust. Someone that can be a problem solver for you and help, and someone that's process oriented too. A lot of times people in technology, they can be very systems minded in thinking, and sometimes the problem isn't a technology issue. It might be a process issue that you want to address. And it's like, hey, maybe if we just did this or approach this differently, this would solve this problem. And we don't need to spend any technology dollars to solve that.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Christian, what do you tell churches when you're first sitting down to talk with them? What do they need to do to really start excelling in this area? Or even, let's not even try to excel. Let's just try to get caught up to speed. So
I actually love that approach, David, of let's crawl, walk, run, right?
Mhm.
Like let's take our time. We can't all be so fortunate as to have an Adam Hann sitting in the pew in the front row, right? Um, but I do think a good technology program should start with questions, not with answers. So Adam, I loved how you talked about partners and finding like people that will truly come alongside you and partner. That should always start with questions. And too
Mhm.
often, I see churches they're seeking what I my friends in intentional churches, which I know that you just
right.
interviewed them on the Advantage not long ago. Um, they talk about silver bullet thinking. Like we're just going to go get this piece of technology and it's going to solve all of our problems. What I actually tell churches is that technology is just a great multiplier.
Yep.
So it will speed up terrible decisions if you're making terrible decisions.
Yep. Yep.
You need to start with questions and start very small. And I encourage churches to slow down and become it's a painful thought, but everyone needs to understand the technology at a base layer. You've got to take the time to just bite the bullet and peel off, like get good at what you already have sitting on the shelf. It is very, very rare that I walk into a church and see that they just don't have the tools that they need.
Mhm.
Most of the time, they have 10 times more tools
Mhm.
than they're using. The running joke I always use is they've essentially built and launched the Hubble telescope and they're looking at the moon. Like we we don't need that for what you're trying to do. You probably have the tools you need. So taking the time to really kind of inventory, understand your current capabilities, and then just think about like a building project. Like if you were going to go build a building, put that same cap on when you start thinking about technology. Because if you're not careful, the spend can be the same and you wouldn't dare start a building project without really prayerfully approaching it and thinking through what are my 1 year outcomes, my 3 year outcomes, my 5 year outcomes. Apply the same lens to technology. And
So when
then
Ruth and I,
staffing, I just want to also mention
yeah, go
staffing.
ahead.
I think that's something I hear churches struggle with all the time, especially in that 5 to 10 person staff range. And what I have found is that when you really spend the time to talk to your children's pastor, your guest experience pastor, or the people running that function in your church, one, they're probably way more process minded than you might think, to your point, Adam. They may be far more capable. They may have strong opinions about how you're using technology right now.
Yeah.
But two, you can begin to talk to them about the needs you're trying to fill I have talked to so many technologists across the country, people sitting in the pews, working a job in the marketplace. And what their church is asking them to do is make coffee on Sunday morning or hold a door open. And they have no idea that they have a mental technology powerhouse that's
Mhm.
holding doors for people when they desperately need the help on the backside. So I think just beginning to have those conversations with the people coming through your doors, you will find a lot more technology expertise than what you knew was possible.
Yeah. So, Adam, have we leaned on a lot of volunteers that way in the technology world at LCBC?
Yeah, we've leaned on volunteers on that way, both for IT and digital. So some of it has been like practical, like help us like figure out things. But we've also used them as consultants and had people come in who are the experts. Like I think you mentioned earlier, David, about like do I trust the person that we have on our team to like make this right decision? Or you were joking about Andy, like purchasing stuff. Um, Having an expert come in to kind of like validate the thinking, or to even kind of, hey, here's where you're at and here's where you need to go, is such. I mean, I feel like that's helped us out a lot at LCBC when we've leveraged volunteers that way,
Yeah,
as
good.
well.
And
So when we
I'm
talk about trust, real quick, when Ruth and I were first married, and Adam, you probably heard this story because I've used it all the time at LCBC when I'm trying to squelch buying things, or it may not have gotten down to you when you were first starting. But when Ruth and I were first married, microwaves were just becoming popular. Lit and microwave ovens were the big thing, and they had all kinds of bells and whistles on it. And so we bought the lit and microwave oven, a much more expensive one because it had all the bells and whistles. And ultimately, all we ever did is pop popcorn and reheat food. So we didn't need any of that. So almost your Hubble analogy there, Christian, and looking at the moon. So how do I know that the IT person or the digital person isn't trying to sell me microwave ovens for the church when all I need to do is heat up popcorn or reheat pop popcorn and reheat food? Because that's one of the
so
trust areas that I struggle with. So
absolutely. And this is an area where widening the aperture becomes critically important. Most pastors, they they find technology a little tiresome. It's a little hard to understand. And for whatever reason, I watch them time and again. I often get called in to clean up years and years of they take off their wisdom and discernment hat and they
Mhm.
just try to minimize those meetings, make them go as fast as they can. And they end up doing one of two terrible things for their church, which is they underinvest in the conversation to understand what's being sold, or they overinvest in exactly what you said. Oh, we don't need that. You're just trying to spend more money. And I watch churches do the equivalent of deferring maintenance on their building.
hmm,
If your facilities person comes to you and says, "Hey, if we don't take care of this chiller on the roof, there's going to be a problem." You don't ignore that in July when it's 100 degrees outside. You pay attention. And so I always say a technologist should be able to explain the technology to you in a way that you understand. And
Mhm.
if you don't understand, it's up to you to keep asking questions
hmm,
until you do. Because I really truly believe the pastors, whether your staff is 3 people or 300, God has called you to that position. He's given you the discernment that you need. You just have to keep that hat on and hang on to the conversation. And very quickly, I think it becomes obvious when you ask good questions. Tell me exactly what we get. Why do we need this? And it's not a matter of typically those questions. What I'm trying to get at, David, is that those questions are rarely technical in nature.
hmm,
They're
yeah,
almost always process and culture,
hmm,
which the
Mhm.
pastors that I work with excel at that. But for
right.
some reason, they don't take the time to get the technology into that bucket.
Okay.
And that would be my strongest encouragement. Take the time to get it there. And if you need help with the technical, like Adam, you were talking about leveraging volunteers. That's how that's how I got into ministry. Jim was actually meeting with some technology vendors, didn't understand what they were saying, and asked me to come sit in the meetings with him. And I was like, sure, I'll take an hour and hop on a call with you. Like, that's no problem.
Hmm. So I can't believe I'm going to ask you this question because I typically didn't like it in sitting in the pastor role. But what percentage of the budget should we be expecting to spend on? What's it going to cost me? I guess bottom line. And so, are there some rules of thumb as to how much money we ought to be spending in the digital side, or can you even separate it out? So probably a lot of churches they're not separating it out. It's digital and IT. But what kind of money should we be spending on this?
Man, that's a great question. And I'll give you the consultant answer. It depends. Um, if you have, if you're leveraging technology like the way Adam has described technology for LCBC, where you have truly digital layer on top of all of your ministries. I often try to kind of keep that simple and refer to that as moving IT to the center of the organization. What starts to happen is that a lot of other budgets end up in the IT budget. A lot of your special projects, a lot of your how you're going to measure success, all of those things kind of start landing in tech, and technology kind of becomes the hub of the system. That's one end of the spectrum. If you're on that end of the spectrum, this will hold on to your seat tightly here, but that your budget should probably rival what your facilities or your environment's budget is. It's going to be significant portion of the budget. If, however, you're much more typically what I see churches is underspending, where they don't have any of that digital layer, and they're trying to get digital layer results when they are underspending and when they're looking at every single line item and talking about efficiency all the time versus outcomes. So if you're more efficiency driven, I've seen that budget as low as 1 to 3%, which is not going to yield great results. Um, it'll keep the lights on if you
Yeah,
want your technology to be like that. So
yeah.
it's a big spectrum, and I would encourage churches to be thinking about removing duplication and being as intentional with that digital budget as they are with the facilities and environments budget.
So you said 1 to 3% on the low end. So give me a number on the high end.
So I think on the high end, you're probably looking at somewhere between 7 and 10%.
Yeah.
So as a pastor, I'd probably be puking right now, going, "Oh my
Yeah.
goodness."
But
Adam,
remember,
where?
that's pulling in a lot of those other elements that are
Yeah, that seem to fall
typically,
under that umbrella. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's our experience at LCBC, Adam?
Yeah. So, funny enough, a year ago, I was with a lot of churches similar to LCBC, and this question came up. So we all brought our budgets, and I was honestly thinking that LCBC was going to be on the lower end, and the average is right around 2%. And these are some of the biggest churches in the country that we're talking about. And LCBC at the time was at 3.75% of our, and that's like including staffing and operational budget in there. Um, and the thing that I wanted to kind of lean into there is like there's a couple things with technology is it should scale. Like if you're constantly dumping money in technology, then it's either not the right solution or it's not scaling well for you. Like that's kind of the benefit of technology. So there should be like kind of like an evening out at some point for a technology budget. But there's also going to be times when you have significant investment. So I think about like a campaign that LCBC did a couple years ago. We were focused on some of our technology initiatives, and that created an increase of the seasons where you're ramping up and spending more, but then that should level out again at some point too. So from what I've heard and from different experts in the community, I would align with what Christian was just saying as well from percentages.
Well, what's interesting, I pulled out my calculator real quick as you were talking, Adam, and thought, okay, I know what LCBC's budget is. What would 4% be? It's a lot of money, but maybe it also is different in the larger churches because of that scaling, and so they could maybe perhaps get away with a little smaller number than. But that's a challenge because none of us have room to work within our budgets. At least we don't think we can. So that's where you guys have to prove that it truly is going to be a ministry multiplier in order to do this. So yeah, Christian, I was cutting you off there. Looked like you were ready to jump in and say something. So
No, I mean, I think Adam, that's really that's interesting. I always love hearing that. I used to do some of the same exercises when I was on staff. I think that there's the elements that you're talking about of those big investments, they bite even more on the smaller churches. When you have to, again, I tend to use architecture analogies and building a house analogies because it's a little easier to wrap your head around. When you have to replace all of your hardware because maybe you've been deferring maintenance for 10 or 15 years, that's just it. It ends up being a big bite out of the budget. And so you have to find ways to maybe smooth that curve over 3 to 5 years. And then you're also trying to bring up staffing and bring up I tend to work with churches who are in that invest mode because they're trying to figure out how do we get on the other side of this curve.
Mhm.
We're behind the power curve right now. How do we get back in front of it?
Well,
Um,
where it gets even harder, I think, Christian and Adam, is again, you're fighting to add even just one person to your team. And so then I look at it and go, okay, I can hire, in my mind, a ministry position, or I can hire a IT or a digital position. And so where's the return going to be better? And then even if I do hire somebody in the IT or digital world, then you're going to ask me to then also invest in equipment or software. So it's going to cost me more money. And so I would think the tendency is to let's just keep delaying this and go with the ministry because I can see those results where it's a little bit harder to measure or see the results in the digital side.
You're exactly right. One of the hardest conversations that I have with churches is when they're beginning to think multi-site maybe for the first
Yeah,
time, or maybe they're just starting multi-site. And most of them cast big vision for the number of campuses they want to launch. And when I tell them one of your campuses that you're going to launch is actually all just infrastructure and technology investment.
yeah,
It's the same amount of time, people, energy, materials. Whew, that's
that
a
hurts.
that's a
Yeah.
tough conversation to have, but very necessary.
Mhm.
Exactly. Hey, so as we're kind of drawing to a close, let's talk about AI real quick. So, how involved are you guys in AI? What are you telling Christian churches? Adam, are you involved with AI on the staff side? And what direction are you giving to churches and pastors in that area?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely involved in AI. We're figuring out how to leverage it well, how to use it with our systems. Put a group together to kind of think through cybersecurity with AI, through how do we leverage it to be more efficient. And then also, I think the ministry implications that will be coming to our doorsteps because of AI, the types of things that we're reading and hearing, and people are just going to AI, is going to it's going to change how we do ministry. So very much diving into that. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about it, to stay on top of it because it's a rapidly changing.
Sounds like it's changing so fast. Yeah.
It is, yeah. And so much of it too is like we're at the frontier of it and we don't even know all the repercussions that it's having on
Right.
us as people right now. So we want to make sure that we're using it well. So it's like kind of like some table stakes, like what's our policy? Like what chatbots can we use? What can we do with our data with it? And then how do we, like, are we okay like writing emails in it, or are we okay writing a sermon in it? There's like a line there, like a threshold of what we're okay with. So kind of navigating some of that stuff first is what's on our list, and then kind of going after that, how can we leverage it to be more efficient with what we're doing?
Yeah, so in some ways, just at least being intentional, knowing what's coming, but at least having a plan as opposed to just burying your head in the sand and not thinking
Yeah,
about it. Christian, how about
exactly.
you? What are you saying to pastors?
Yeah, so I love how you're thinking through this, Adam. That's absolutely how I encourage churches to think about this. Is it's new, it's different. Just to give some perspective, from 1950 until 2009, the number one technology that people were glued to was their television. And somewhere in the late 90s until about 2009, that was when all the way up to about 2012 was when mobile devices actually surpassed the television for the first time. So you got that, 60-year curve down to it only took, 15 years to adopt that new technology. I think AI is going to be even faster. In probably 5 years, we're going to see huge adoption and totally disrupt a lot of how we do business. But it's still 5 years. And I think that's a lot more time. I talk to pastors all the time who are are panicked about AI. Like they're trying to figure out, how do I even get my head around this? And I just tell you, start small. And by that, I mean, if you're not using AI at all, just open up your browser and go to ChatGPT or Perplexity or Grok and start using it once a day instead of Google. Like that's a great, just what is this thing? How does it work? And when you're going to go to type something into the search engine, type it in there instead. And I think that's kind of your entry point, because there's technology coming out that's mind blowing. But if you don't even have the concept of the basics, if you don't even understand what it's good at and where its limitations are, it's going to be even harder to access some of those more advanced things that are coming. And they are coming very fast. This is another area where I think pastors benefit greatly from talking to other pastors. Dedicate your next, virtual catch up with your pastor friends. Just pick one, hop on a call and talk about it for a half hour, an hour. How are you using it? How's it impacting your sermon prep? How's it impacting your Sunday morning experience? Find out what the other churches are doing around you, and you'll find it's interesting. I'm always fascinated. I love asking pastors this question because no two pastors yet have been using it the same. They're all over the map, and there's a ton of innovation that's happening out there that and then I talk to pastors who I tell them what I just heard, I just talked to this pastor doing X, Y, or Z, and they hate that. They would never do that at their church. Well, that's fine. Like that's the beauty of the body of Christ, right? So start the conversation and just start using it. Toe in the water if you're not doing at least that. And then if you want to geek out about LLMs and how we can leverage those agentic AI, and yeah, I love to have those conversations. Most of the pastors that I talk to aren't there yet.
Mhm.
Well, just a plug for the Advantage. We've got a workshop coming up. Matt Shandera, who has been on the staff at LCBC, but is very much in the tech world and dealing with AI, is going to do a day-long one of our Advantage workshops. And so encourage you
Nice.
guys to jump in on that. A cool opportunity. Adam and Christian, thank you for the time. Thank you for the work that you're doing and helping churches. And we tend to, well, guys like me anyway, tend to be slow adopters on this area of things and drag our feet and resist. So thanks for being patient with us and guiding us along and building that trust, because I think that is a real big piece of it. And
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're
appreciate
welcome. And if people want to get a hold of you guys, or you may not even want that. So, Christian, how would they get a hold of you if they wanted to get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can find me on the Intulse website, intulse.com.
Okay, great. And Adam?
Yep, on lcbcchurch.com on our team page, there's a way to reach out to all of our staff there, but you can find me there.
Yeah, good. Guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
But,
All right,
yep.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Advantage Podcast with David Ashcraft and for participating in our goal to strengthen and encourage pastors and their churches so more people are introduced to Jesus across Pennsylvania. If you found this helpful, feel free to pass it along. To find out more about the work of The Advantage, visit our website at theadvantage.org.